Welcome back to the worst channel on all of YouTube. I'm DipperGames420 and today we're going to be taking a look at the S.H.Figuarts Super Saiyan 4 Son Goku from Dragon Ball GT. To give a bit of context here, this guy was first shown off at Tamashii Nation's event 2014. He was later shown off again in 2015, slightly updated. He showed up at a couple more odd conventions here or there, but was never properly released. That was until about 6, almost 7 years later, on Goku Day 2021, when Tamashii Nations finally announced the release date of this figure. The original intended release date was Halloween 2021. Unfortunately, due to what I can only suspect was either a shipping problem or a manufacturing issue, the figure was delayed to November. Fortunately, this figure is a standard over-the-counter release and was retailed at about $60-65 US. And to preface, this is the original version of the figure. This is the original issue. I don't have the re-release, so any QC issues you're gonna see on this may be exclusive to the first batch of these figures. But without me getting into too much detail here, let's just start off where all these train wrecks start off, with the box.
Hey, you guys are watching Burn
Alright, now that the train has officially gone off the rails and is actively plowing through civilians, let's move into the box, shall we? It's standard fare for S.H.Figuarts. You have all the normal logos, Snake Stem, GT, Tamashii Nations Bandai Silver Toy sticker, designed by Tamashii Nations in Japan, Bandai Spirits made in Vietnam, Tamashii Nations quality seal, his name, some pictures of him, the effect, his face, and his face again blocked out by his tail, some pictures of him on the back, and some blurbs that if you want to read them, go ahead and pause, as well as some Japanese that most certainly hints at an overused joke. Bottom you get his name and another picture of his face. On the other side of the box you got his name on a clear window, and up on the very top you have his face once again. Now without further ado, let's just get Goku out of his box. So now that we have Goku out of his box, let's follow through and move into some size comparisons. Here he is standing next to Victor Chaz, and they got more two of the most expensive pieces of plastic that I own. Objectively one of the best figures of 2022, and Misiark.
Welcome. If you're feeling suicidal, you've come to the right place. Cause I wanna fucking kill myself as well.
That side of the way, let's move on to his paint and sculpt, and for the most part, this is pretty decent. Like the sort of subtle shading they added to his pants, it's not too intense like full power Goku's was, and it was properly applied this time around. Kind of breaks when you look at the back of his leg, because you see just how glossy, obviously unpainted this is, but I have a feeling had they painted it, it probably would have ended up like your average NECA figure. But as for the rest of his paintwork, it's pretty good. What is there, it's pretty clean for the most part. The skin, so long as you don't look at it too close, it doesn't look too shabby, but you start looking at it up close, like what we're doing right now, and you can see where the skin is bleeding into the fur. As a quick warning, it does chip off if you move the joints too much, or if yours is stuck fresh out of the box, it probably is going to chip off. As for the actual sculpt work though, yeah, they did a really good job at capturing his likeness. I've heard some people say it's a bit too bulky, but me personally, I don't think it's too bad. It's pretty accurate to how he was when he first turned Super Saiyan 4 against Baby. There's also a lot of fur sculpted throughout, so that is very nice. The musculature is defined quite well. There's a little hole where his tail comes out of. Tail is again, modeled quite nicely. His sock, leg warmer, boot things are sculpted well. I'm a big fan of the blue joint that they gave the ball hinge for his foot, because logically that should be black to match the shoe, and then there is nothing on the bottom of his feet, so that's a bit of a disappointment, but at the end of the day, it's not too bad, especially because most of the time you're not going to look down there, so not much of an issue. Then we have the face, and this is probably the weakest face of the bunch. For some bizarre reason, and this even extends to the promotional material, his eyes are looking off to the side. I don't know why his eyes are looking off to the side. It also seems like on my copy, for some reason, his eyes were printed too high on this face, so it looks even weirder. And then there is his mouth. And I get GT had longer chins, but I think this takes that a little bit too far. As you can see, there's barely any room for an upper lip here, so yeah, it's definitely a strange looking face, but thankfully I can't say that for the other faces. This just happens to be the worst one of the bunch. Enough of me rambling, let's move on to his accessories. So here are all of Goku's accessories and what have you laid out in front of you, and before we go any further, I will warn you, this again goes specifically for this version of Goku. The peg holes for his hands on my copy were too small and he came out of the box, so I had to drill the peg holes wider. Same thing also went for his tail. Had to do that when I first got him as well. But nonetheless, let's stop fucking rambling on and move on to his accessories. Get 3 faces that aren't attached to him out of the box, and like I said, they're all pretty nice. Get the smirk, the side glance, gritted teeth face, and the yelling face. All of them are done pretty well. The yelling face, I feel like the eyes were a bit too high on that one, and the gritted teeth face can look a little weird from some angles, but for the most part, these faces are really, really good. And you also have the newly molded hands, the instantaneous movement Kamehameha, open palmed ki blast, martial arts stance, and peg Kamehameha hands. And the reason for the peg on his other Kamehameha hands is to put the ×10 Kamehameha into his hand. Aside from some minor issues here and there, pretty decent batch of accessories, all things considered. Now let's move on to the area where this figure just sort of falls apart for me, which is the articulation. Before we talk about anything else tied to this figure's articulation, let's just start off with the fact that this is not a new body system by any means necessary. Tanashi Nations openly promoted that this was a new system, but it isn't. It's been around since at least Full Power Broly. Secondly, the QC on this figure is pretty fucking terrible. I'm gonna be honest, again, strictly for this patch, but as you can see, the hair has ball hinges that allow these 2 little bits back here to move. Problem is that the head does not actually support the weight of these back bangs too well. It's a common issue, it's pretty easy to fix, so I'll let it slide here. Otherwise, the head actually does get really good movement because it is on a barbell joint, so that is nice. Can lean pretty far forward with the neck. Back pretty good too. These little bits here also move, and his shoulder on this side is fairly tight. Not scary tight, but fairly tight. The supposedly new butterfly system, he can cross really good. The other shoulder has a lovely little issue where it was not pushed in all the way and is loose. Bicep swivel, double joint at the elbow. Wrist, because of the modification I did, the hand likes to fall off quite a bit, but you do get standard wrist pivot and swivel. And then you have the waist. Yeah, suffice to say that's not off to a great start. Can't lean too far forward. decently far back and lean side to side a little bit. And I can't get his lower waist to turn at all because it's completely fucking frozen. So that's wonderful. His tail moves on a ball hinge. Can kick forward, really nice. To the side, pretty good. Back, really, really nice. I mean, kicks back so well you can hardly tell it kicked back at all. Get a thigh swivel, which works about as well as they normally do. A relatively tight knee joint, which looks alright. Not a fan of how they sculpted his knee here, but it's not too bad. You have a ball hinge at the ankle. The top half of the hinge is pretty tight, and the lower half, again, nice and loose. So I have a toe hinge, which is pretty ugly, but it works. We also have a nice little QC issue where the glue wasn't applied properly on his right hip. As you can see a seam here, no seam here, so that is going to break on me. That out of the way, let's move on to my final thoughts. So after that little tirade about his QC, at the end of the day, what do I think of this particular figure? Pretty decent, all things considered. I mean, he looks really nice. He accurately resembles Super Saiyan 4 Goku, and he comes with a pretty decent array of accessories. That and what works of his articulation works pretty well, but that's exactly where the problem is on this figure. At least, again, this batch. The QC was utterly horrendous, and I am deathly afraid of pulling this thing apart to try and fix him, because there's a high likelihood that I will end up snapping something, regardless of how careful I am trying to fix this figure, simply because, well, he came out during the height of the Vietnam QC plague, so yeah, he is not particularly great QC-wise. Again, as far as everything that is good on him goes, yeah, there is a lot to say that is positive about this figure. He looks fantastic, the colors are really nice, they pop. The paint's a little sloppy around the edges, but it looks really, really good otherwise. It's just that the QC might be a little off-putting for some people. As for me personally, it doesn't detract from the figure too terribly much. I would still wholeheartedly recommend him at retail price. Aftermarket prices, hell no. But at retail price, yeah, if you can get him for that kind of price. I know a few places still have the reissue in stock, so if the reissue is any good, go ahead and get it. So at the end of the day, yeah, go ahead and get them if you can at a reasonable price. But nonetheless, this has been Dipper Games 420. And I'll see you guys next time.